So let's talk about how we're thinking about where Druid's going. So there's three things we care about that are our values. Number one is performance. We want it to be fast, and performance is always a number one for Druid. It's the reason Druid exists, and it will always be number one in our hearts and our minds. Another value. The very first version of Druid, for some of you that have been around since the beginning, since the very early days, the very first version of Druid didn't support SQL, didn't support the ability to group by more than one column at a time, believe it or not, didn't support expressions. Very, very little functionality supported, but there was a core there of very high performance that we then built additional functionality around. And Druid of today bears almost no resemblance to that original prototype. Druid of today does speak SQL, speaks actually, I think, more SQL than it doesn't at this point. And we are well on the way to full SQL support. And then finally, operations. Operations making things really nice and smooth to run. And there's a little picture of and a river is a good metaphor, I think, because of two things. One is that operations is about having things be flowing smoothly, like a river. And also, this is a very tranquil photo, and having good operational properties makes your life tranquil because you don't have to worry about things all the time.
We're good.
Yep. All right. We're gonna rewind to see the cool photos. All right, here they are. There was a cool rocket car. There was a toolbox, which is boring, but that's what functionality is all about. And there was this tranquil river photo that I was, good thing that I had all these things to say about it, because that's what enabled us all to realize that I wasn't actually sharing my screen. Moving on to the actual content. Like I said, I'll keep this brief. So I just want to talk about some things that have happened in the most recent releases. This is a selection of stuff in these three themes over the last 3 releases or so. And then on the next slide, I'll talk about what's happening in future releases, the next 3 or 4 releases. Okay, so recent releases. On the performance side, there's a lot of stuff here because, like I said, we love performance. We care so much about it. Vectorization enabled by default for time series and group by queries. That was a couple of releases ago. It's a 2 to 5x performance boost for a lot of the queries that we tested it with. Vectorized expressions. So the ability to use vectorized queries even if you're using expressions. We went from having no expressions to having an expression engine that worked and had some overhead to it, to now an expression engine that is very low overhead and fully vectorized. So awesome. Roaring bitmaps enabled by default. That's as of 1 or 2 releases ago. That's really big. It helps a lot for index and filtering operations for high cardinality columns. So if you're not already using roaring, check it out. It's great. Query laning and prioritization, something that enables, so the folks at Target presenting about their situation where it's very rare that a query takes more than a second. That's great. If you've got the scale of cluster to enable that, your life is easy, performance-wise and operations-wise. Not everybody's in that bucket. Some folks have a situation where some queries are sub-second and some queries are operating on tables that are a little bit too big for the britches of the cluster and take more than a second. It might take 10 seconds, 20 seconds, something like that. So query laning and prioritization helps weave those workloads together by having a fast lane, a slow lane, setting up priorities such that the slow queries don't steal resources from the fast queries, and we keep the fast queries going fast. So if you do have a heterogeneous workload, check that out. And then hash-based segment pruning. We've always supported range-based segment pruning, and we recently added hash-based segment pruning to make sure that if you're getting partitioning or isolating the proper data really quickly. Moving on, functionality. We added a lot of cool SQL stuff in the last year. We added joins, we added grouping sets, we added the ability to do subqueries everywhere, and we added the ability to do inline data sources. So Vadim demoed inline ingestion, just pasting some data in. Inline data sources, the same thing on the query side. On the query side, you can actually, you don't even have to ingest data. You just put it in the query. It's pretty cool. And then on the operations front, a lot of the stuff there is about robustness for ingestion. So native batch ingestion robustness, split hints, automatic shard determination, trying to remove tuning parameters. A lot of what we're doing there is trying to make things such that when you are doing those native batch ingestion jobs, that there's fewer and fewer parameters you need to specify. And supporting all partitioning schemes for auto compaction. Auto compaction itself being a feature that I don't think was in the past year. I think it was a little more than a year ago that we introduced that. But now it supports every possible partition scheme, which is great.